Hello there, this is Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so excited to be sharing a trio of holiday themed cards with some of my favorite Simon Says Stamp products. Each month for Simon Says Stamp, I create a video based on die cutting for the series Making the Cut. This month we are creating 3 holiday themed cards with pattern paper inlay. I'm also going to share some tips and tricks on creating super decorative stamped backgrounds that really showcase these beautiful die cut inlay designs. We're going to start with the Simon Says Stamp Prismatic Snowflakes stamp set. This is a newer stamp set with beautiful snowflakes, perfect for creating decorative backgrounds or even a focal point on a card. We're going to be stamping these mostly in groups of 3 or other odd numbers, and I'm going to be doing it in sections as well as doing this assembly line style. That's because all 3 of my backgrounds are going to be exactly the same, even though the focal point and the colors used on each are going to be different. I am stamping my first snowflakes here with Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to emboss with Simon Says Stamp gold embossing powder. This will be the same for all 3 backgrounds. This blue cardstock color, or I'm so sorry, I'm using silver embossing powder first. We're going to be using silver, gold, clear, and white, all from Simon Says Stamp. We're going to heat set these after each time we stamp. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the card, but it also, I think, really showcases the beautiful die cutting so well. You can also use lots of different kinds of elements on your cards with these backgrounds. It wouldn't have to be the die cuts I'm showing here. You could do a big bold sentiment, a stamped greeting in the center. There are just so many options. I love the look of these backgrounds with multi-stamped and embossed snowflakes all in different colors. The first cardstock background I used, the blue, is Hero Arts Mist cardstock. This red is Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red cardstock. And finally, we will be using Hero Arts Meadow cardstock. The cardstock color choices used for my cards today were very much influenced by the die cut that I want to use on the design. So for the blue background, we'll be using the Stylized Angel. For the green background, we're going to be using the Geometric Christmas Tree. And for the red background, we'll be using the Poinsettia Ornament. All of these dies work really well for inlay die cutting, which I'm a huge fan of. Now that you've kind of seen the process for stamping these snowflakes, I will speed up the video a little bit to stamp the rest of the border all the way around. After I've stamped my first trio of snowflakes, and I did start with these smaller snowflakes, or pardon me, the larger snowflakes first, and then I'll fill in with smaller ones around that perimeter. We're going to switch the colors of embossing powder. So I started with silver, then I'll move to gold, clear, and then white. Clear is going to give a tone-on-tone look, which is going to work nice because we will be stamping a text over each of these backgrounds, as well as adding just a little ink blending around the edge to deepen and darken that. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. The clear embossing should show through that, especially if you would use a different color of ink. I did a lot of tone on tone. It shows up much more bold. If maybe you would go around the edges, let's say with black soot or a darker, deeper color than what I'll show here, they show up a little bit more. I think the green actually shows up the best. And I'm using the new Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide with that. We almost have all of our snowflakes. Look how beautiful this is, just as is. You actually wouldn't have to add anything extra if you want a little bit more clean and simple look. But I'm going full out building my own pattern paper that I want for my cards, which is truly one of my most favorite things to do, even though we'll be using pre-made pattern paper for our inlay. Pattern paper choices are so important because I really feel like they help tell that story that you're trying to portray on your card. It makes a huge difference whether you choose solid cardstock or, like we'll be doing today, pattern paper. None of those choices are wrong at all. They just give you different results. Now we are stamping our tone-on-tone text background. I'm using the Noel print bold prints background from Hero Arts for my blue background, and this is with some Broken China Distress Oxide ink. I purposely changed up my background stamps for each card to go with the image that I was using on the front. So this one to me really worked beautifully, the Noel print with the angel. I'll be using a Christmas text background. All of them I wanted to be text of some sort. So a Christmas text from My Favorite Things for the tree. And then the bolder text background from Simon Says Stamp for the red background. I inked around the edges with an ink blending tool that I use only for Distress Oxide inks, using the Broken China Distress Oxide to kind of mute and blur out those edges a little bit, and then I buffed away any excess ink that was sitting on top of the embossed areas so that the colors of the embossing powder still show through. Let's take our green background next and use that Christmas background stamp from My Favorite Things stamps with the new Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide color from Tim Holtz. This is a beautiful green color. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that I could love a green more than I probably use Mowed Lawn the most of my other distress inks as far as green goes. This Rustic Wilderness, oh, it's my new favorite. I absolutely love it. After I have inked the background, I'm again going to take an ink blending tool that I only use for Distress Oxide inks, and we're going to ink around the edges to blur them out just a little bit. We don't want the text to be the focal point of the design, more just a supporting element to finish off that background and add that interest. You can see how the ink sits on top of the embossed areas, which really kind of ruins the snowflakes. So immediately after I have inked up the edges and I have those blurred out the way I want them to look, I'm going to take a dry rag. It has no product on it at all. This is just a microfiber cloth. You can also use a paper towel or something similar. And I'm going to buff away any of that ink sitting on top of the embossed areas so that the snowflakes have that crisp, beautiful feel. Finally, we are going to take the Holiday Words background from Simon Says Stamp and stamp this on the red background. Now, the red color of ink I used first, I did not love. In fact, I'm not even exactly sure which one I used. But I just did not feel like this showed up the way I wanted it to. And so I will switch to Aged Mahogany. I did not take my paper out of the Misty. I didn't do anything different. I didn't have to restamp my background. You can just see that just wasn't exactly what I was going for. So I'm just going to immediately re-ink my background with Aged Mahogany, which is going to be much deeper and darker. I probably should have started with that anyway, since Schoolhouse Red cardstock is a nice deep dark color. But I love to keep those little quote-unquote mistakes in the videos so you can kind of see how to fix those yourself when you run across those things in your own card making efforts. We're going to take an ink blending tool and add some deeper, darker ink around the edges of this background as well. Then don't forget to buff away any of that excess ink sitting on top of the embossed areas. Once we have all of our stamping, all of our embossing, and all of our inking done, we're going to splatter the backgrounds with some white distress paint. This is the Picket Fence Distress Paint from Tim Holtz. And I am going to water it down a little bit. I'm actually going to pour just a little bit on my glass work surface here because it wipes away so easily, much like all of the ink cleaning does here. I'm going to just pour a little out. I'm going to add just a couple of little squirts of water to that to water it down so it splatters easier. And then I'm going to take a small paintbrush and just splatter that all over the surface. And then I actually had to go run errands for a little bit, and I had some other appointments and things to do. So I came back probably 3 or 4 hours later. It would not take that long, but this was a perfect opportunity to allow those backgrounds to completely air dry so that when I came back, I could instantly start assembling the die cuts right in the center of these designs. I get asked a lot how long steps take. I will tell you, because I was on a time crunch, all the stamping, all the embossing, and all this splattering, this took only an hour, a little less than an hour to do that whole part. And then all of the die cutting and stuff probably took another hour. So all 3 cards took 2 hours to create. I am first using the Stylized Angel die from Simon Says Stamp for the blue background. This is a beautiful die that I believe was released in 2019. I have die cut it once from smooth white cardstock and another time from gold metallic Lawn Fawn cardstock. We're going to be adhering the gold metallic frame on top of the white, which is going to give our die cut a little bit more stability. I didn't want to pop it up too terrible much, so it's only 2 layers. I'm using a fine tip applicator on the Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to secure these together, and then I'm going to put some acrylic blocks on top of this to help hold it down and hold it flat to my card base while I die cut the different pattern papers that I'm going to use for the assembly of my angel. She is absolutely gorgeous. I think she is such a pretty die cut and would really make the best cards. My daughter even already claimed this one for someone she wants to give a holiday card to because she liked this card so much. That gold really showcases the design beautifully. In fact, at this point, if you didn't want to do any inlaying at all, you can pop your sentiments on top and this would be beautiful as is, but I think you'll see what a huge difference the right pattern papers make as far as inlay goes. We are going to be using pattern papers from, I believe, 2, I hope that's right, I'll double check, 2 different pattern paper pads, which you can see right here. This is the Honey Bee Log Cabin. That's going to actually be for the wings. You can see that kind of gray, sparkly look over there on the left side of your screen. Actually, guys, I'm using 3 pattern paper pads. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So this pattern paper I'm using right now is from the Kaiser Craft, and it is a beautiful gold sparkle. This is actually what inspired the whole design because I loved this pattern paper. I used it for her dress as well as her halo. And just so subtle and so beautiful. All of my die cuts today are definitely kind of more towards the neutral end of the spectrum, but that was the look I was going for. After we have her dress and halo, and there are 4 pieces for those dress and halo. There's the halo, there's the main body of the dress, the bottom part of her dress, and then there's a teeny tiny little rectangle over there on the left, which I couldn't find. It tried to disappear on me, but I will find it here in a second and we will add that to our image. Luckily, I did not have to re-die cut that. I was starting to think I'd have to re-die cut it, but I went ahead and start assembling her wings and I was able to come back and find that little piece. We're going to add some glue then to her wings. This is a little bit more work simply because it's all these little bits and pieces and it's like putting a puzzle together. I kind of like to keep my die and my pattern paper together as much as possible if it doesn't all fall out. And that makes it real easy to grab those pieces and just start putting them together. An embellishment wand, a jewel picker, something to that effect is going to make the assembly so much easier. Tweezers are another great tool. It just really depends on kind of what you like, but it helps keep your fingers out of those little bits and areas. The wing choice was very much on purpose. I looked for something that had texture to it because I wanted the wings to look soft. And I thought this pattern paper from the Honeybee Stamps Log Cabin set really fit the bill. It can also be a snowy background. I'm even going to use some of it on the poinsettia ornament here in a minute because I liked it so much. It has some sparkle to it. And then this particular pattern, there's actually another one in the, I believe it is the Holiday Traditions Honeybee paper pad that's in the gold colorway. So we'll be using the gold and this whitish silver on the poinsettia ornament. But as I get more and more of these angel wing pieces in place, I think you can really kind of see the texture, and it adds so much to the design. We'll finish adding all the little wing pieces, and there are quite a few, but it's so worth it because I think it just changes the entire look of this image. And then finally, our final color or pattern paper pad we'll use today is the Honeybee Stamps Autumn Afternoon. There is a brown ombre in this that worked so fantastic for the hair. And in fact, the bottom part of the ombre is super light, and I ended up using that for her face so that I didn't have to go out and pick another pattern paper or do any additional die cutting. I was just able to use that same pattern paper piece. I am using some acrylic blocks often throughout the creation of my cards, and that's because they are something handy that I have around that are easy to place on top and hold the background flat while liquid glue dries. We'll add some glue to her hair. And then we're just going to grab all these little bits and pieces and just gently work them into the inlay. Again, all shades of kind of tan, beige, white, and brown. Very, very neutral, but it ends up just being so pretty. I loved how she turned out. I probably could have made 10 of these cards. It was so much fun. I probably wouldn't mass produce a lot of these just because of the time-consuming aspect of that. But if you have someone special to send a card to, as I mentioned, my daughter already claimed this one for someone that she knows would really enjoy this particular kind of design and the message. I think it's worth the extra effort. It's a gift in itself. It's even something that maybe the recipient would display during the holidays. And then we'll finish with the face. The last thing I'm going to do here before we move on is add my die cut sentiment. This is the Alleluia word and shadow. I'm only using the word. We're die cutting it from some heavyweight Nina white cardstock, 110-pound weight, and then gluing a die cut holographic word on top of that. And this is a very subtle silver holographic cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and it's so beautiful. All of the cards have that silver and gold kind of feel to them, definitely inspired by the holidays. And it just really, really looks pretty when you tilt it into the sun. I didn't pick one that had a crazy holographic pattern because I definitely didn't want it to take away from the angel or in the other cards, the poinsettia ornament or the tree. But you can see it has a little pattern to it there, and it just is so pretty. We're going to layer it over the bottom part of our angel, and then we're going to set this aside and work on our next card, but we will come back and add some little stamped and embossed sentiment strips when we're all finished. When you're die cutting, in fact, all of my die cuts today feature a dot somewhere for letter I's or a J. You want to make sure and add those because it definitely finishes off the card. And then I'm just showing the pattern paper packs I used for my angel. Let's go ahead and create our beautiful tree. Now this is a recent release die, but very, I think, similar. I tried to pick all dies that were similar in some way or another, or that really made beautiful inlays. So this is the Geometric Christmas Tree. Again, the frame is from Lawn Fawn metallic gold cardstock, and the background is from white heavyweight cardstock. 2 layers adhered to our green background. And it's beautiful as is, it really is, but just watch how it transforms when you add the inlay. So for this inlay, again, we're keeping with our neutral theme. We've got a beautiful kind of beige with gold metallic random dot pattern. And this is from the Honeybee Stamps Holiday Traditions paper pad. I believe this is 1 or 2 years old. It is probably my favorite Christmas pattern paper pad of all time. I have actually used almost all the paper, at least a portion of it from my paper pad. And so I used a lot of scraps here. I think this might be one of the only patterns from that I had not used. And I used it to create the heart designs going up the tree. For the background of the tree, we'll be using a white pattern paper, so it has a very subtle kind of marble effect to it. And this is from a different pattern paper pad. It's actually from that Log Cabin pattern paper pad. Nope, I lied. It's from Autumn Afternoon pattern paper pad. I want to make sure and tell you the right one. I kind of stuck to 4 basic ones throughout all of these. And it's just got a really subtle pattern to it. It's much better than a solid white cardstock because I like that little hint of gray in the design. And as I add more and more of these pieces, it really adds such a special touch to this tree. For the star, we're going to do something different, and I'm actually going to use a different holographic paper than what I'll use for the sentiment, and it has little dots. It's maybe my favorite holographic paper from Simon. I'm using my 2 favorites. The one with a real subtle, and then this one is not subtle at all, but I wanted this star at the top of the tree to be super sparkly. And even though it's very tiny, I think especially in real life, you get that sparkly effect with the top of the tree. And I'll show you that here in a second. Some of these little pieces for this tree, oh, they were kind of a pickle because they are really teeny tiny. And all those little, this was one of those die cuts that all the pieces scattered after I ran it through my die cutting machine. And so it was a super puzzle to put together. Again, this is probably not a card that you would make 50 of to send out, but maybe for that special person, you would want to create something like this, or even maybe make it into a thank you card after the holidays for someone, whether they, hosted a dinner or whatever the case may be. I love sending out thank yous after the holidays, and I think this would be a really nice one. Or maybe you need to send it to someone who's done something nice for you, or whatever it is. And then I've got, it looks like maybe one more little piece that I was on the hunt for. But we'll grab that, and then we're ready to do the star on the tree, which I was talking about with that holographic paper. And I think I will show that here in a minute. I hope I did. So that you can see just the difference in that holographic paper as opposed to the more subtle kind of stripy design that we're going to use for the Joy script. I just love how the tree turned out as well. The gold pattern paper of the hearts really draws out the gold of the embossed snowflakes around the edge. The camera does not like holographic cardstock. I will tell you that. So it doesn't always translate great in video or even in photographs just because of the effect of it. You really need to be kind of tipping your paper. But I love this little holographic paper. Let's add in those last couple little teeny tiny pieces. Yeah, it does not like it at all. I think it's probably better the further away. Just going to clean up any little bits of glue that I see there with my Spellbinders Tool-in-One. I like the little sharp piercing tip there. It helps remove some glue. Now I'm using the Joy script from Simon Says Stamp. This is a newer die. I've used it for some other cards where I was showcasing the embossing folders, but this can be used over and over again. I absolutely love the script design of this. Very pretty. We're going to layer that through the center of our tree. Again, I did 1 layer of smooth white cardstock and 1 layer of holographic cardstock. And I'm kind of just seeing where I'm going to want to put my sentiment strip on this. There are the 2 holographic papers I used. I did leave it in here. I wanted to show that real quick. Let's set that aside now. And here are the pattern paper pads I used for this card. Finally, we have our poinsettia ornament. This one is a little bit smaller, a little less intimidating. I probably would make more of these because this one was lots faster to put together. There's not as many pieces. So this is super pretty. You can also use the outline. I think this would make fantastic gift tags. I'm thinking I might even put some together because I think this would be really nice as gift tags and really pretty, and you could change up the colors. I am doing all gold and white here. I purposely used, you can see in the bottom left corner of the screen, that gold pattern paper. It's not even gold glitter, but it looks like gold glitter. So if you kind of don't like the mess of the glitter cardstocks or even real glitter, these pattern papers are a fantastic option for that because I think it looks like glitter in photographs. It is a really, really pretty pattern paper. We're going to use that all the way so it looks like it's the actual ornament, and then the design on the ornament. We're using 2 different shades of white. So we're using the white kind of marble that I used for the tree. That's the background of the tree. That's the bigger petals on the poinsettia. Then for the smaller petals, we're using the white kind of glittery paper that we used for the wings on the angel. Then in the center of the poinsettia, we again use the gold. We don't want to put anything in the top of the ornament, nor did I add liquid glue to that, because I'm going to thread some ribbon through. That ribbon is actually from I think it's from the Gnome Peeking card kit that Simon came out with. So if you have a pretty little silk ribbon or some twine or anything like that, just a little scrap, tie it to the top. It really finishes off the ornament so beautifully, and that's what we're going to do here. I'm just using this nice deep dark red, definitely inspired by the background of the card. I've also already attached the joyful die cut word. This has been out for maybe a year or so. This is one of CZ Designs, Kathy's dies for Simon Says Stamp, and I love this. I think the joyful looks so pretty there and just finishes off the bottom portion of our card so perfectly, which you'll see a little bit better here in a minute. So now that we have all of our inlay done, it is time to do finishing details for our card. And for me, I personally love a die cut sentiment and then a small stamped sentiment or a sentiment strip. If you want to use pre-mades, that would be awesome too and save you a little bit of time. I'm using the Tiny Words Christmas stamp set. We're going to stamp 3 different phrases on some smooth white cardstock with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with the Simon Says Stamp gold embossing powder. I did all of them at once because I am going to take a sentiment labels die and die cut them into strips. If you don't have strip dies, or maybe you have some from other companies or whatever it might be, because there are some out there, you can trim them into a strip if you want to as well. I just really like using a die because I feel like it gives it that professional finished look, almost like a pre-made sentiment strip. And the gold embossing is just going to tie in so nicely with the gold outline of our die cut images and the gold embossing of the background. We're going to take our sentiment strips. I'm using the smallest width one from the set to die cut each, and I'm going to line it up with one side, run it through my die cutting machine, flip it around, and die cut it the other way so that each end is perfectly die cut. Again, you could totally use scissors and a paper trimmer if you don't have sentiment labels or strip dies. We're going to do this for all 3, and then we're going to finish by adding these to our cards with foam adhesive and placing all of our backgrounds, which do measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, so they completely cover the front of an A2 white card base. We're going to add those to our pre-made white top fold cards to finish off. Now for joyful, I did not want my sentiment strip to cover the entire little tail of the letter Y, so we're going to shift it over to the right, and I like how that looks much better. For our tree, I started by adding adhesive all the way across the sentiment strip, but where it overlaps and goes onto the card base itself, it looked a little funny because there are some layers there. There's 4 layers of cardstock with 2 layers for the tree and 2 layers for the word joy. So I actually removed that and only put foam adhesive in the center part, not on the ends. So they're lifted up and they're not going to attach themselves to the card base. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this trio of pattern paper inlay cards featuring some of my favorite Simon Says Stamp holiday products. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Simon Says Stamp die cutting that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.